hosted by Mike, the Big Cheese.
All right, welcome back to the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. It is our 17-year anniversary, and we got a great show for everybody tonight. Rob Origlio of Street Child, James Rivera of Helstar, and David Rock Feinstein of The Rods. It's been a great 17 years. We've had our ups and downs, our highs and our lows, but I'm glad that everybody stuck with us, and it's a shame, but I don't think I get the chat open tonight. It's giving me an error message on the chat here on my end, so if you're listening and usually come into the chat room, try to bear with me while I try to figure it out, but I don't think it's going to open tonight, but that's just par for the course with this show, right? So just sit back and listen to the music live tonight and enjoy it. If you can't get into the chat room, I apologize. We'll work on it sometime during the show. But right there, The Rods, we'll Let Them Eat Metal. We're going to get to the rock interview in a few minutes. We're going to play a couple of tunes before then. Not a lot of time for chit-chatting tonight. We've got three guests that all know how to talk, so it's going to consume most of the 3 hours that the show is on. So we'll try to get in what we can when we can and talk about what we can when we can. But I know Christian wanted to hear Leather Nun, Another Bite. The drummer passed away this week. Let's get on for them. Let's get that on for him. Try to squeeze in one more tune, and then we'll get to the rock. So bear with me here. All right, Trauma with We Are Watching You. Tonight's playlist is a sample of the one from the first show that we ever did. So a lot of those songs were one of the first songs I played when we started the show way back in 2008. I want to thank everybody for listening since then. We kicked things off tonight with the Roger Let Them Eat Metal. I still have no luck getting the chat room to work in the studio today. But you guys can use it like you normally do from your phones or your computers or your laptops, whatever you're working on. And I'll get you in the chat and on my phone here and there when I can. But let's get to that interview with Rock Feinstein of the Raj. We got a lot of guests tonight. We got to get through all these interviews and be able to wrap up the show in 3 hours. So let's get off the brand new Raj record, Wild Dogs Unchained. Here's Mirror Mirror, and then we'll talk to The Rock. fine, buddy. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm more happy that I get to talk to you. And it's been 45 plus years of the rods, and not only you're still doing it, but the albums are getting better and better and better. That's a rarity in this business, and especially for doing it for so long.
I'm just happy that I can still do it. I mean, there's so much going on in the world, and people getting sick and disabled and dying and everything. You know, Ronnie once told me, he said, "Rock, you got to do it while you can." And he was right, and I always remembered those words.
That's true. We don't know how much time we got here on this planet, so we got to make the most of it. And
That's
you've
right.
definitely been doing that. I mean, Wild Dogs Unchained. I mean, I love it that it's a little bit of a throwback to the Wild Dogs title of the record, but yet it's a whole new record with all new sounds. And I mean, lyrically, I mean, you've gone in such a whole different direction with the last two records. I mean, you've really taken on a lot of the causes that are going on in this world. I mean, World on Fire alone just kind of like, blows me away.
Yeah, well, I thank you for the compliment. We've been working those dogs for a long time, since the first Wild Dogs album, and they've been chained, they've been caged, they've been held back. I think it's time to unleash these dogs, like unchain them, So that's what the whole concept of that was. And back in the day with the writing of the lyrics, it's like in the times back in the 80s, everything was about partying and, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So you kind of you stayed in that vein, of
Yeah.
music. And, in the last, I don't know how many years go by so fast that I hate to say a couple of years, so it's probably 10 years, but, I wanted to write, more meaningful music, other than like, what time's the party start, kind of thing. And in the last couple of years, what's been going on in the world, and actually the last couple, it started with the last album. This album, World on Fire and Tears for the Innocent, and there's a couple other songs on the album that were inspired me by me seeing what's going on in the world, today, with people getting killed and dying and losing everything that they have, and how fortunate, we are that hadn't happened to us, but it really has had an impact on me. And I just wanted to, state that in my music.
Oh, you definitely accomplished that. I think people don't realize that even though you're a musician and you're in a band and whether you want to be a professional band or just a local garage band having fun, you do kind of write what's necessary at the time. I mean, you might have had different feelings when you wrote the Rod record or Wild Dogs or Rock Hard, but you
Yeah.
kind of had to stay in a specific genre back then, especially when you were signed. I think back then you were signed to Arista. You kind of had to go with the flow a little bit, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing is, look, I know this, the songs, there's some songs on this album that are so different that they're not really, you wouldn't expect to hear from the Rods, like the songs we're talking about. Um, you know, it's hard for me to understand whether the fans will accept, that or not, Um, and it really, I don't want to say it in a negative way. It doesn't matter because, I wanted to express my feelings through the music that I'm writing, and the rods were my vehicle, to do that, and it's a free world to listen to whatever you want. If you like something, that's fine. If you don't like it, that's fine too. It's there's no criticism involved, but I'm just hoping that the fans will listen to these songs and kind of be inspired by the point that I'm trying to make in the music of them.
True. I mean, World on Fire and I think Tears for the Innocent both clock in at almost 7 minutes long. Really long, lengthy songs that kind of tell a whole story. And then
Yeah.
when I remember watching the video and I was like, wow, like my jaw was dropped because of like, and for a minute it didn't sound like the Rods, but then once everything started picking up and getting, I'm like, wow, this is like the Rods, this is like the Rods on adrenaline.
Yeah. I'm really proud of this album. It's got some great songs on it. They're meaningful songs, and I really, through the years, actually my whole career, Ronnie has been just an incredible inspiration for me, with his genius mind and his, way to write lyrics and tell stories and the whole thing. Um, and I just felt that I wanted to be, and I hate to say more mature, but I want to write about real things, in the way I feel about me personally feel about what's going on in the world today, and I think it's important.
True. I know a lot of it started with the last record, Rattle the Cage, and I love it that, we got records from you guys 2 years in a row, like back to back. It hasn't been like that since the early days of the band when you're releasing a record almost every year. So, I mean, you got to be full of creativity right now because you keep coming up with more and more music. And I mean, like, these really lengthy, like, epics in a way.
Yeah, for some reason, it's coming very easy for me right now. I don't know if it's because we've changed the pattern, like in the old days, I say old days, back, with writing a song that you knew Ronnie was going to sing, there was no limit, to what you could write, because he could sing anything, the Rods were be a three-piece band, heavy metal, rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. We're basically limited to the type of songs that they could do, because of the singer that I was, and the image that we had to portray. We were called like the American Motorhead, which is a compliment to me because I really like those guys and Lemmy, and we did a bunch of dates with them, and they were great. But you know we I feel now, because of the way the world is, that it's time to express in my writing, really the way I feel. And I've taken a lot of this stuff that, and I would look at Ronnie's lyrics and I see how he wrote, and he wrote incredible lyrics, and the stories and everything that were involved in his lyrics, and they were serious. And I just wanted to be more real, with my lyrics.
Over the course of the Rod's career, I mean, there have been a couple of times where you've brought in lead singers to front the band, and to me, it's like when you're not singing, it's not the Rods to me. There was some great records and some great music, and other ones where the names of the band was changed a little bit, because it really wasn't the Rods, I guess, too. But you're the voice of that band. I mean, whether you like it or not, that's what people
No,
want and expect.
it's funny because when we started the Rods, actually I wanted to start a band, to go play clubs and make $50,
Yeah.
I went to see this band play that Carl was playing drums in, and I got to say, hey, this guy's a pretty good drummer. I got to meet him after they finished, and I said, hey, you wanna get together with me and we'll try to start a band? Said, yeah, okay. So, we got this local bass player, and of course we went through. Freddie's our fourth bass player. That's another story. That it's not an evil story; it's a good story. But we started the band with the idea of just going and playing clubs, cover songs. And I said, who are we going to get for a singer? Well, there weren't any singers around at the time, So in the beginning, it was like I sang some songs and Carl sang some songs, and Steve, the first bass player, he sang some songs. And of course, I sang most of them. But all of a sudden, like after a couple of years, we started to establish an identity to the band, which means, okay, I guess I'm the singer. It was never for me to, to step out and say, I want to be a singer, and I did plenty of, vocal backing, like in Ronnie, with Elf and Ronnie Dio and the Prophets in the early days. But you're right about that. And it's true because, there's no Motorhead without Lemmy.
True.
There's, and it's that way. It's the sound of the band. And I really appreciate, the people that like the band and accept it for, what it is.
True. I mean, in the beginning, when you decided I'm going to be the singer, as well as the guitar player, did you feel that, I mean, in the studio, it's easy to do both because you're not doing it at the same time. But when you had to get up on stage and do both at the same time, especially in the very beginning, did you feel like the singing was limited because you concentrated too much on the guitar, or you had to kind of ease off from what you could do on the guitar to concentrate on the vocals?
Well, the singing, I think, up until the last couple of years of doing live shows, the singing really was sacrificed, because it was more so the playing that took precedence over the singing, which is kind of backwards, really, because the singing is what's important because you're singing a message, But like you said, it depends on the song too, how easy the song might be. Some songs might be easier to play the guitar and sing. Sometimes songs might be more difficult. I used to really, when we did a live set, Gary used to sing at least two songs, to give me a break. And I always looked forward to him singing those songs. So, hey, the break, I get to stand back here and just play guitar, So, but yeah, it can be difficult at times, but I I think in the last few years that we played live shows, really tried to concentrate. I think we're better live now than we ever have been, in the last few years. And it's like, I think it's because all of us are concentrating more on, the singing and the playing and whatever. And Freddie, the new bass player that we have, is a huge, asset to the band. He's a great bass player and a great guy. So
He is a great bass player, and he's from the area, which makes it nice too, because you guys are close to each other, so
yeah,
that does help out. And this is his second record with the band. I mean, Gary's been out of the band. Gary's been out of the band more times than I think he's been in the band. So it's
well,
a come and go thing with him. But I think Freddie was a great addition.
yeah, when Gary decided to retire, because he was with the band the longest of any of them. When he decided to retire, it was Carl and I, said, what do you want to, what are we going to do? Are we just going to, fold it up right now, quit, because Gary was a pretty integral part of the band, because he had been with us so long. And, Carl and I we didn't want to try to restructure the band, because when you do that, it's a different band, it's not the Rods. So we decided if we can find a bass player, that would fit the bill, right, we do it. Well, Freddie, he's local. Carl had even done some side jobs with him before. He had played with him. And we got a hold of Freddie, and he came in at rehearsal, and he was all up for it, and it worked out great. He's just a nice guy and a great bass player.
That he is. You could have went back with Steven Starman. Went back to that classic 1979 lineup.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we had Steve Starmer originally. He's local, and I'm not sure what actually he was with the band for that first album. The Rock Hard album, and there was he had some personal, things going on with a marriage and whatnot. And then we, after that, I think we got Craig Gruber, and he's another guy that's from Cortland, and he's got some success. He played in Rainbow. He played with a bunch of bands that were kind of big, but he didn't really jive that well with us, and he ended up, having to leave the band. And so I think there's only been 3 bass players. So yeah, so Freddie's. Oh, then there was Gary. So then, after Craig, Gary, another guy that's local, was playing in a local band. He was from, the Ithaca area, and he fit perfectly, with the band at the time. And so he was with us for a long time till he decided to retire, and now it's Freddie. So it's all good.
Yeah, it all worked out. You have bands today that have members that literally come from all over the world, and they make it work with, the file sharing and stuff like that. But, do you feel it's always better to have people that are local? I mean, Carl's a PA, but he's not that far away. But it's important to have people that you can just get together with and say, hey, let's, get together and write some stuff, or let's, rehearse a little bit.
It is more convenient when you're close by, because, Carl, even though he's an hour and a half drive here, we rehearse here in Cortland. So every time we rehearse, which is not that much anymore, because if we knew we're going to be doing some live shows, we'll set up rehearsals and he'll come up, and rehearse. But in the old days, we rehearsed almost every day, but Carl lived in Cortland at the time. So Carl had to travel, but he doesn't mind. And, Freddie's local and I'm here, and there's only 3 of us, I can't imagine having a 5 or 6 piece band. We got 3 bands. Hard enough to get together, but yeah, it's not so bad. It is convenient to have people local, because you can get together. There's times like if we're working on a new song, whether it's to record or live, and I can show Freddie some stuff before Carl comes up, like Freddie will come here, and Freddie and I will get together, and I'll show Freddie, the song, and kind of get him, so that he knows the song a lot more than when Carl comes, he's that much farther ahead. So it works out really well that is local, So, and recording the way it used to be done years ago was the band got together in a room and set up and played as a band, counted off, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's go. No click tracks, no, nothing special. And recorded, nowadays, with everything being digital, the drums are recorded in California, the guitars recorded in New York, everything is separated, but that's just the way it is now. And there's some good and there's some negative things about that. But it does make it easier for people that live thousands of miles apart.
Sure. I mean, we have such advancements in technology over the last, decade or two. I mean, is that something that you easily get accustomed to and work with, or do you just say, I'm never going to figure it out or learn it. I'm used to doing it this way, or do you kind of really have to evolve with the technology as it comes in?
Yeah, I'm setting my old ways. I don't follow the technology. I never, wanted to know what dial to turn, for mixing. All I wanted to know was what I wanted to hear, and then I would tell the engineer and let the engineer do his job to turn the dial. I really never wanted to be an engineer or keep up on the technology, because especially nowadays there's so much out there. It's almost impossible. I mean, if you take the guitar alone, how many different pedals, how many different, all of everything, So me, I'm old school, amplifier. I use a wah-wah pedal. It's the only pedal I've used pretty much my whole career is a wah-wah pedal. Once in a while, I might, use a flanger on a record or something like that. But I'm pretty much old school, and I still that way, So I'm not a tech guy type thing.
Yeah, I'm the same way. When we did this interview on Zoom, like, I hope I can make it work because I can't figure these things out. I'm used to just picking up a telephone and talking
Yeah,
to people, but it's the way the world is today. But
yeah.
getting back to the record, Wild Dogs Unchained, you decided to revisit a couple of older tunes also. I mean, did you pick songs that you felt what you wanted to refresh or just give a new take on it? How'd you pick the songs? Hurricane, I
Well,
believe, is one of them.
okay. So Hurricane has always been one of our most popular songs. We always play it live, and we did a different. When we do it live, we do a different arrangement a little bit. We make do a little bit more in the arrangement live than what's on the record. So we decided to do that, and then Carl actually wrote the song "Wild Dogs," back in the day, and it was a title track of an album. We never played it live, ever. Every time we tried at rehearsal to play that song, it just sounded like crap, and it could never get it to sound heavy, could never get it to sound right, and it's a shame because, people requested the song. It was a title track on one of the albums, and we never played the song. So, in the last couple of years, we talked about that song. Carl, said to me, he said, can you take that song and just try to do something? He said, I don't care what you do to it. He said, do something to that song and just make it heavier, make it so that we can play it live, make it so that maybe we can record it, and just do, change it some way. Well, I after a while, I decided to sit down with it, and, I didn't want to change it too much because he wrote the song, and I still wanted it to express, what he, how he wrote it. I just wanted to try to make it heavier. And so I worked it and did a different arrangement, and I played it for Carl, and he loved it. He goes, "Oh, that's it. That's great. I love that. I love what you did to the song. Like we have to record that song." So I said, "Okay, fine." So that's how we happened to do Wild Dogs. And this other song, "Make Me a Believer," is a song that I wrote like, oh God, many many years ago. We never recorded it. Um, we did this. There was a show, a local show, benefit type of thing, where a lot of musicians got on stage and played. It was an outdoor thing, and this guy who was a singer named Shmulek Avigal.
Yeah, Sammy.
Yeah, Sammy. Yeah, he lived in the area, and he ended up singing that song, and it was recorded that day. Everything was recorded, and that version ended up on, I think, the Heavier Than Thou album. But other than that, we never recorded it. And I think Freddie might have said, oh, that's such a great song. We should record that song. And, I really never sang the song. I wrote the song, and then it was set aside. We never never recorded it. So I said, yeah, it's a great up-tempo song. And then we worked it out and recorded it. And that's how we happened to do those three songs.
I'm hoping and assuming that we're going to get many more Raj records over the years. But do you think this is something that you might do, like reimagine or revisit some of the older songs and breathe new life into them?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because we talked about, what do we do? What are we going to do next? Um, this last album, like you said, everything came in a hurry. When Massacre picked up the option for the second album, I'm like, holy shit, I got to write 10 more songs. It's like, I can't do that overnight, even though I'm constantly collecting, what I think might be a good title. Or if I sit down and fool around with a guitar and I go, oh, that's a pretty cool riff, I'll put all the stuff on my phone, and then when it comes time, if I get inspired to write about something, I listen to all this stuff, and about 99% of it sounds like crap when I listen back to it. But anyways, I get off track and I forget what your question was. But let's see. What? All right, refresh me now. What did you actually ask me?
Well, it started out about, re-recording and reimagining some of the older songs, on maybe future records. And then you said Massacre.
Yeah. Okay, so I said, Carl and I were saying, what do we do next now? What do we do next? And he said, why don't we take some of the older songs, like from way back that we hardly ever played live, and we'll set up a live show like in our hometown, and we'll record it live. It'll be the Rods Live, but we'll be doing like 10 or 12 of the old songs that we never used to play live, So we thought, oh, that's kind of a great idea, we can do it really easily. There's a good venue here that has a good, sound system and a good everything. So we'd be able to go in there and, run through things a couple times, and we'd have a live album of our old tunes, So that's on the horizon. That's probably something that we're going to do. And so I told Carl, so Carl said, go through the songs and pick out, songs. So I picked out, like 10 or 12 songs, and I started listening to them. I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take 3 or 4 or 5 songs at a time. Call Carl. I said, listen. 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 Some of these songs, I got to go through these song lists again, because some of these songs I'm embarrassed to sing the lyrics. You can't sing these lyrics, today in today's world. So I went back, but I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to probably do a live album, and maybe on that album we'll do like one new song, that I've written. So, yeah.
That'd be great. You were talking about redoing some of the lyrics because they might not fly today. I mean, Violation would definitely be one of those songs that wouldn't work in the world the way we live in today. But it's still a classic song.
I know. People like that song. And we all, most of the time we do that song. When we have a long enough set, a lot of times if we're supporting somebody, we only get 40 minutes, or 45 minutes. So we have to cut a lot of these songs that we know people want to hear, because you can only do so many songs and so many minutes. A lot of times we'll edit the song or do a medley where at least the fans are getting a part of the song, that they want to hear. But Violation's always been one of the popular ones. And usually when we used to do that in a barroom situation where we had all night, we really extended things, I told a lot of stories during that song.
I can imagine. Is there any material like maybe pre-hard rock? I mean, rock hard that, you still have lying around that you did record but never really released that you can go back to, or is it everything has been used up from that time?
I probably would say everything's been used up, but I did some solo albums, excuse me, that were really never released on a label. In fact, it was funny because I listened to one of the early ones I did. I think I did it back in, it said the year 2000 on there, and they were only CDs that I had printed up for myself. There was no label, so I might have had like 50 or 100 CDs printed up to give out to my friends, whatever. And I listened to the album today, and I'm thinking, shit, that's a Rods album. Those songs could have been a Rods album, and so I mean, actually, some of those songs could be taken and done by the Rods on a new album that were never heard by, very many people, So, yeah, it's possible that there's something out there.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about 2000. That's got to be One Night in the Jungle. I mean, that was a great record.
That is. That's the album.
Yeah.
One Night in the Jungle. I mean, when I listened to that today, it's like, that could have been a Rods album.
Yeah, Freedom Reigns, and there was Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. There were a lot of great tunes on that record.
Yeah. There's a lot of good tunes on there. So
it would be great to revisit all that stuff because you know what, over the years, people, especially today, people today have very short attention spans and they don't travel back that far. But it'd be
yeah,
great to hear, for you to get new life into those records and those songs, even if they become rock tunes.
yeah, and actually the lyrics to some of those songs fit in today's world,
Yeah, that's true.
which is funny. Like you can figure that in the year 2000, it's like 20 something, almost 25 years old, 26 years old.
Yeah, you're like Nostradamus. You predicted the future.
Yeah, yeah, predicted the future.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, the music business is a crazy business. I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride for a lot of bands that have been around for almost 50 years, like you guys have. There's the ups and there's the downs. Early days signed to Arista. Record labels change over the years. There were years when the band wasn't active or doing anything. I mean, do you really have to have thick skin or just, realize that disappointment is kind of par for the course in music, or is it still personal? Do you still feel it, after like all these years?
Yeah, definitely. It's not something that goes away. It stays with you. Even if you say, when the Rods, we kind of split up. We didn't, we had a time. I think we just got fed up with the business part of the music business, being two words, music and business. We got kind of fed up with the business side of it, and so we're not doing this for a while. But the thing is, the music always stays, well, for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, and I think for Carl, the music being in you, it stays with you. And even if you try to like put it aside for a while, which I did, I was driving an old truck at the time and I took the radio right out of the truck.
Wow.
I didn't want to hear anything, I didn't want to have anything to do with music, but sooner or later it emerges again. It comes out, and if you're a writer, it really does come out because all of a sudden you're getting ideas for songs, and you want to hear when you put a song together, you want to hear how it sounds recorded, so it's like for me, and I think a lot of other musicians, it's something that never goes away. And as long as you can physically and mentally do it, I think, it doesn't matter what level you're doing it at. You could be just doing it at home for your own enjoyment. At least it's there, it's something that's there. That's the way I feel about it anyways.
True. When you have those moments where you feel like you have to step away because like the business can become too much and it does drain the life out of you. Was there ever a point where you felt it went on so long that you didn't think you would ever get back to music again, or sooner or later just something sparks the interest and brings you back?
I don't know if there was ever a time that I felt like I'd never get back. When I left Elf, because I needed to get away from music for a while. That was another situation.
Sure.
I needed a break. Is what I need. I needed a couple months. I never planned to leave the band permanently, which now that I think back was very, very unfair to Ronnie and to those guys in the band. It was a horrible thing for me to do that, even though I felt personally I needed to get away from it for a while, and I regret it today, and I feel so sorry that I did that to those guys. But I had to do what I had to do at the time. Well, those guys moved to California, and basically, we had a very close association with all the guys in Deep Purple, because of them producing the Roger and Ian producing the record and stuff, and us touring with Deep Purple a lot. When Rainbow came about with Ronnie, basically it was Richie that took the whole Elf band at first, like for Rainbow. I knew at that time if I was there, I certainly wouldn't have been taken in, because I'm the guitar player.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, a question that will never be answered is if I had gone to California and Elf had maintained a certain level of progression, maybe Ronnie wouldn't have gone with Richie. Maybe we would have decided to stay Elf and take it from there. So that's a question that could never be answered, but it's in my mind anyways. But once I knew Rainbow was happening with that, and then sooner, one by one, the Elf band guys were leaving Rainbow. They were getting fired, they were quitting, whatever happened. I knew that there would never be another me going back to Elf again, because it would never be another Elf. But in the last 10 years of Ronnie's life, I got to see a lot of Ronnie. We spent a lot of time together, and we talked about doing an Elf reunion album where he would actually play bass on the album like he did back in the day and sing. And when I would go to visit him in California, we would go into, he had a little studio in the basement, and we would go there and work on songs and possible, things to do that album. And we did that for a number of months, a number of years, actually within the last 10 years of his life. But, his schedule was always so busy with either the Dio Band or Heaven and Hell, and me living 3,000, another reason why, living close together, it would have been easier. But me living in New York and him living in California, didn't make it any easier. And then, of course, the tragedy of him getting, sick and dying. So it never happened.
Sure. That would have been amazing for that to have taken place and to see that. I mean, when you think, many years from now when you and I aren't here anymore, I mean, I hope we got a lot more years left than that, but, we're getting up there in age. And when I just think of the legacy that you've left behind, I mean, between the Rods and Elf, I mean, this is music that's going to be played eternally and people aren't going to forget it. It's always going to be here. I mean, that's got to make you feel proud in a way. We say, I contributed something to this musical business that it's never going to go anywhere. It's never going to die.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, it's like writing a book, it's there, and you can't, it's hard to believe that Ronnie's been gone for like, it's going to be like 16 years.
Yeah.
I listen to, the records, whether it's Dio or Sabbath or Heaven and Hell, I still tear up, when I hear him sing. And, because of the association that we had together, and it's just, there's something it never goes away. And like you said, it's a legacy that will hang on for a long time. And we're trying to keep that, and for him, in Ronnie's sake, we're trying to keep that alive, by having, events to raise money to, for the Cancer Society and the whole thing. So, yeah, you're right.
I think you accomplished that. Rock, they're going to cut us off like 5 minutes because this Zoom seems to only give you like a 40-minute time limit. And I don't want to think I hung up on you, but Wild Dogs Unchained, it's out now on Masca. You guys did such an amazing job on this record. I'm hoping that you're still in this writing mode. And then in 2026, we're going to get another record.
Yeah, me too. We'll have to see what happens. I want some good things to inspire me.
Well, I don't know if you're going to get that in this world today. You might get negative things that inspire you. It's a crazy world we're living in, but yeah. I know you can come up with it. And
yeah,
I mean, thank you for the almost 50 years of music. I mean, I've been there since the very beginning. I mean, I got the Rock Hard record when it came out, and I've been listening to you guys ever since then. So, I mean, like I say, thanks for all this great music, and keep giving us as much more as you can.
I'll do that. And thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Rock. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
All right, David Rock Feinstein, what a great guy he is to talk to. We opened up tonight's show with some classic rock with Let Them Eat Metal, and we played Mirror Mirror before the interview. We're really tight tonight on time because of all the guests we have on the show, so we're going to keep all the chit-chat down to a minimum. We'll talk about everything next week. I wanted to talk about the Twisted Sister reunion and a few other things, and I said I wasn't going to complain tonight about anything, so let's save it all for next Sunday night. But next up, Rob Origlio from Street Child. Let's play one or two more tunes before then. A little over 17 years ago, my best friend Tommy Flanger came across the site Blog Talk Radio, and he says, hey, we can host a show using the telephones and blah, blah, blah. And he did a show. He named it Metalheads United, and we did it that one weekend. And typical of Tommy, 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, a month goes by, and Tommy doesn't do any more shows. So I said, listen, if you don't mind, I'm going to take it over. I'm going to create my own show. I want to do it every week so I can get better at it. And well, 17 years later, I still haven't gotten better at it, but I'm consistent. We pretty much do a show every single week, except on a major holiday if I'm on vacation. And even then, I try to pre-record something for everybody. But we do a live show. At one time, we were doing 2 live shows a week for the first almost 9 years of the show. So not too bad, right? But so it became what it is when you think about it. 1,268 live shows we've done. There's been 1,311 guests, plus the 3 we have on tonight, and 2 of them we've had on multiple times before. That's a lot for 17 years, if you ask me. We've done a lot of interviews on this show. Some have been great, some have been disasters, but they are what they are. It's a combination of me and the guests, and tonight I think we got a great bunch of guests, and they should all be good interviews. So the show Heavy Metal Mayhem came up because when I was talking to Tommy and I said I was going to do my own show, I had Jack Panzer on. I was playing Cardiac Arrest, and in that song, in the middle of it, they say Heavy Metal Mayhem, and it just struck with me and I put it on there. I know it's generic, but that's all I could think of at the time to come up with a name for the show. So let's play some Jack Panzer. Obsession, only the strong will survive. Right, we're going to get to one of New York's most classic bands from back in the 80s. That's Street Child. We're going to talk to Robert Origlio in a minute. But how about we play something off that classic record? We'll do Temple of Set. We'll talk with Rob. We'll play some more Street Child and get to James Rivera at the end of the show. Here you go, everybody.
Fury of violent destruction, a chorus of voices in pain. Mist, maze, torture caves of insanity. Anubis holds Osiris' name. You must heed the word, don't disturb the temple of sin. You breathe your last breath, death awaits in the temple of sin. The temple of sin. The temptress, the goddess deceived you. She sucks out the life from your blood. The sacred I shatter to pieces. We have no hope this far beyond. You must heed the word, don't disturb the temple of sin. You breathe your last breath, death always in the temple of sin. Of space lies beyond you. The sea to the home of the dead, feeding the rivers of sorrow, and the evil men dream in their head. You must heed the word, don't disturb the temple of sin. Your last breath, death always in the temple of sin. The temple of sin.
Hey, Rob, this is Mike calling for our interview. How are you?
Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. I mean, it's been 35 years listening to your music, so I'm glad to put a voice to
It's longer than I've been listening to it.
it. You know, when you think about it, it's hard to believe that a record you put out almost 35 years ago, people are still talking about today. And it's like you said, it's probably something you forgot about over the years or didn't put much thought into.
Well, what's funny is that the band only lasted maybe 2.5 years, and once it ended, I mean, me, Nelson, and Ralph did something else for a few years, but it wasn't until like 2002 that we found out that people who knew who we were, because I basically did an internet search on my name, and all of a sudden this website came up called Encyclopedia Metallicum or something like that. And I see
Yeah.
Rob Origlio, bass, Jesse Odom, guitar, vocals. I said, what is this? And I'm looking, and then I started seeing other things, and I'm like, hey, guys, you got to see this. And, I guess somehow the EP made it across to Europe, and, people started, I guess, writing about it. And that's when I found out, too, that it was worth like €1,000. And I'm going back to like I said, 2002, I think. And so yeah, and then subsequently, Facebook came around, and I think Jesse put up the Facebook page, and I started getting people asking me for interviews and stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice feeling, that people still appreciate it, and once in a while I get messages from people, mostly in Europe, wanting to put it out on CD, things like that. So, but it's cool.
Well, the scene, like, over here, everything kind of fell apart in the 90s when grunge, came about, and it was a whole different vibe. But in Europe, they never gave up on it. They kept it
No,
going
they never
over
gave
there,
up.
but nobody knew because we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have any connections to the rest of the world,
Right.
and then we found out that, this was still alive, and it started coming back over here. And I know that the album was re-released about 15 years ago or so. I forgot who put it out. No
Buried by
Dust or
Dust
something.
and
I don't
Time.
know. Buried by Dust and Time. That was it. So
Yeah,
it
Nick.
came to a whole new audience. 15 years ago, a whole new audience discovered this band. I'm looking. I still have the original, the original copy, and I know there weren't many put out back then.
No, 500 copies
Wow.
was the original, and that was literally me and Jesse. It was just the two of us. What happened was Jesse he got like a home studio, and he started writing songs. And I know Jesse since we're like 12 years old, and we had this concept, and we were trying to put the band together. And in Manhattan, back in the day, Manhattan, it was like there weren't really a lot of like metal players, so we were always looking for like a lead guitar player and a drummer and even a singer. Like trying to find like a singer. Like I remember putting ads in the Village Voice for a heavy metal singer, like in the vein of Ronnie James Dio and Rob Halford, and I'd get phone calls, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm a singer, and I'd love to try." Okay, and they go, but one question, who's Ronnie James Dio, and what's heavy metal? And I'm like, dude, forget it, So, it wasn't until like later on that we decided we wanted to put out this EP. And at that time, again, like you said, there was no internet. We had to like figure out how to do this on our own. And Jesse had met Nelson through a coworker, and Nelson was Nelson was playing with Ralph in another band in Westchester. And Jesse heard Nelson play. Say, "Hey, can you play a lead on this album for us? Because we're trying to put this thing out." And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And if your drummer likes it, we can get him too." So they did. They played on it, and we were like, "Hey guys, listen, thanks a lot. I know you got your own band, and I appreciate it." And they're like, "No, we're not going anywhere. We're staying with you." So that's how that happened. And
That was
so
great.
we finally. Yeah, I mean, we had played with we played with some good drummers. I mean, Jesse and I had Mackie Jason from the Cro-Mags for a while.
In Street Child.
Well, it was Jesse and I played. It was really me and Jesse trying to put this thing together, and it wasn't really Street Child. We were younger, but it was like the beginning of it. Like Jesse became like a very prolific writer. Like all of a sudden, like he'd have a song a week, and he'd tell me like all of a sudden I get a call, hey, come over with your bass. I need you to put this down. And then, a couple days later, hey, come over with your bass. I need you to put something down. And the stuff that we were playing with him and this other guy was like, more rock oriented, but you could see where Jesse was going with all this stuff. And I remember when I first heard Jesse wrote Street Child, the song, and I was like, whoa, dude, and then this Temple of Set, things like that. I could see where he was starting to go with this stuff. So we had Mackie for a while, but that didn't work out. And then, believe it or not, the famous story was we got this guy who was from Manhattan, actually, Hispanic guy, great drummer. Played with him for a few months, but he just wasn't the style that we were looking for, like a real metal heavy hitter. And so we had to tell him after a few months, hey, I appreciate it, but not really. And he was cool about it. And I said to him, listen, dude, you're a great drummer. You're going to do fine. Fast forward probably 15, 20 years, and Frank Ferrer was with Guns N' Roses for how many years now?
Yeah.
So Frankie, I mean, we used to see each other in clubs. Hey, Rob, how you doing? Hey, Frankie, what's up, man? And then he's playing with Guns N' Roses, So we went through some famous drummers, I guess. But finally, we got together and put the album out, and we used it. We only used it for promotional purposes, really. We just, we like you said, you bought it in Zigzag, right? That's probably Jesse. Dropped it off because he's from Brooklyn originally. He's not from Manhattan.
Okay.
And then Bleecker Bob's was another place. But then we would just send them out to record labels and stuff. How it got in other people's hands, like in Europe and Italy, like in England, Italy, places like that. That's where I usually get calls from or texts from. I have no clue. I don't know. We also. From the actual Facebook page, there's a lot of South and Central American fans too. So I have no clue how I got there either. I'm sure there's bootlegs and stuff, but
I can guarantee
yeah.
that. But you'd be surprised at how you put that out and you give it to certain people, like I said, record labels. Then it just disappears and winds up in record stores and other places, and people get a hold of it, and that's how it happens. And it's funny because when you talk about Manhattan being kind of like a wasteland for heavy metal and hard rock back then, when people hear that and they think about New York in the '80s, they think of it as being like the capital of it because we had Lemoore in Brooklyn, which every band played at and came through at one time or another. There's also Lemoore's East and Queens, but Manhattan itself, I mean, you had the Beacon, the Rich, you had Studio 54, who all converted in a way to like rock and disco, when disco kind of died out. There were shows there, but these were bigger bands that were coming through on a tour, and it was like one-offs. They weren't like dedicated rock and metal venues in Manhattan, so it had to be difficult back then.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we had, it's funny, Manhattan had they tried to do heavy metal nights. Like you told me that you saw us at the Roxy, right?
The Roxy, that was it, yeah.
So the way we got that gig was that was our second gig. Our first gig was the Limelight. Remember on Sunday nights, Limelight
used
to do. Yeah, they used to do rock and metal on Sunday nights, and somehow we got the opening spot for Wasted, and we were like, "Oh, this is great!" And that was our first ever show, and it was the most amazing thing. I mean, the PA system was great, the stage was great, but because we were from Manhattan and we all had real jobs, like me, Jesse, and Nelson all had office jobs at the time. And you get when you work in an office, you meet people. You got hey, come see my band, and then couple that with growing up 20 blocks from the Limelight, whatever. We drew on a Sunday night over 200 people, and of course that goes around to the promoters. So I think Jesse got a call a couple of days later from this woman, and she's like, "Hey, the Roxy wants to do rock nights on Friday nights, and we'd love to have you open up for this band." And we're like, "Oh, okay, that's great. We'd take anything at this point." They're like, "What's the band?" And they said Samson, which is Bruce Dickinson's old band. So we're like, "Hey, that's great. I'll do that." So sound check was at a weird hour. It was at 4:00 in the afternoon, so we all had to take off of work. And I know, right? And Ralph had to come down from Westchester and everything, and we had to bring our equipment and all this stuff. And that night was weird because we get there, we're ready to do sound check, and Ace Frehley shows up. And he's like, we're talking to him, like, hey, what's up? How you doing? And he was basically going to jam with Samson that night. So we hung out with him for a little bit, and then Bob Gruen was there, and he took our pictures, and which was great. And he gave us a card, so we said, well, we should go see what he took of us, and probably grab a couple. So we went to his office, and they had some pictures of us, and we're like, well, we like this one. How much is it? And the guy's like, $800. They're like, yeah, you can keep it.
Wow.
We didn't have $800.
Of course.
So I'm sure he's got pictures of us still floating around somewhere. But that was a memorable show because we were just having such a great time, and it was our second show, another great stage. But yeah, I mean, Manhattan was, like you had places like the Scrap Bar but they didn't have bands. You could just hang out. Club-wise, the Cat Club, that was a cool place to see bands, up and coming bands. But like Lemoore, which is going to make you laugh, but we never played Lemoore. I don't know why. We played a lot of clubs in Westchester.
I would have saw you there if you did. I lived like 2 blocks away. I would have saw you there.
But did you ever meet like the guys from Typo Negative, like Josh? Because he produced the album.
Josh Silva has Star in the Sky Studios in Brooklyn. I was in a hardcore band in the 80s called Stillborn, and Josh recorded our last 3 demo tapes for us in Star in the Sky. So I know Josh very well from back then.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, so we recorded that whole album at Star in the Sky, and because Jesse and so the way it worked was it's all incestuous. Jesse had an older brother, Doug, and Doug was a drummer, and he was in a band with Josh called Original Sin back in like the late 70s, early 80s, and Jesse would hang around, and they stayed friends after that band broke up, and we recorded more than that. I mean, there's stuff out there that I have. And I'm sure Jesse has like earlier stuff like pre-Street Child and stuff. And he would just let us record. And people. And I think that's what gave the album some clout too. We have him as a production credit on there, and he's a great producer. I mean, he knows how to work with you and get the right sounds, get the right performance out of you. It was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun doing stuff at his house. As long as you stayed away from his pet snakes.
I didn't care about the snakes. I was worried about those damn dogs he had. He used to have to run down the stairs to the basement to record because I was afraid the dogs were going to attack us. He had those humongous we first recorded, I think, 85, 86, and then again like in 87 and 88, and those dogs terrified me. I couldn't concentrate. I was like afraid they would come down the stairs and attack me. It was terrible.
Yeah, we actually, before, me and Jesse played with this guy. His name was Ted, and he was a guy from Russia, and him and his wife had gotten to the United States just before you could travel freely, and I guess they were refugees. They went through Europe and settled here. And he was an amazing drummer. I mean, he was because back in Russia, if you wanted to be a musician, like a drummer, you had to go to school for it. So this guy could play orchestral drums and all this stuff, but we went and recorded some demos there with him. We were in a band called Red Sun with him, and he hated those dogs, man. Him and his wife were so scared. It's I hate going there. I don't like this place, Yeah. But it was good memories, though.
I'm a dog lover, but
I know, so am I.
Ring that bell. It's like. You just ring the bell. Let me put the dogs away, and you hear them pouncing on the door. You run down the stairs, and lock the basement door. Then you have to come up to mix everything and sit in that room upstairs with him. I'm like, those dogs are gonna come out and kill us. So we just mix everything really quick to get out of there. It sounded like shit when we got done, but we didn't care.
Yeah, I know. I really know. And you're in that mixing room with the air conditioner in it, and you're freezing your ass off.
But like you said, they were great times, and Josh is a good guy, and I'm glad that he got Typo Negative. I remember him from Fallout with Pete before they did Carnivore. Pete did Carnivore, and then moving on to a Typo. So I'm glad that he has some success. I heard that he's a paramedic today, or works for EMS.
He is.
He is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's a paramedic, man, and because it's once Pete passed away, he just gave, it was like there's no going back now. He had it. I mean, I guess because he was in the business for so long, But yeah, they're all, yeah. I mean, I remember meeting Pete, just walking down the block, like, hey, we're gonna go see them rehearse Carnivore in the basement. I was like, okay, and that was fun, and we just had a blast with it, back in the day, doing all that stuff. It was a lot of fun. It was a learning experience. I still have a Fallout 45. I don't know what that's worth. Somebody gave it to me.
I got the same one. It's a couple $100. I mean, not as much as a Street Child going for €1,000.
I know, right?
I hope you got extra copies because you could. Dude,
I have.
Got a few of them
you want to laugh? I think I have one that's in a frame that's in my guitar closet, and I might have one more. But I didn't know it was going to do that. It's just like, it did. I think Nelson's got a few. And then I have like 5 of the re-release, and which I don't know if you ever seen it, but they did a great job with that, man. I mean, real heavy vinyl, great booklet. It looks really professional. I was really happy with it, man.
I bought that when it came out because there was extra songs on there. There's a couple of extra songs in there. They didn't on the record.
Yes, I think there's 3 or 4 maybe on there, and that was the direction we were going. It was more of a, I mean, it was a little self-indulgent in a way because when we were, like I said, Jesse was such a prolific writer, and then Nelson as a guitar player was, he's like a very, he's a classically trained guitar player. I mean, he went to school for music, and a lot of the off-time stuff that you'll hear on some of the Street Child stuff is really him. And we decided that we were going to do like this theme, for like if we were going to put out anything else. And some of the stuff that you hear, the extra songs were like from like we were trying to follow this theme. I guess we all got influenced by Operation Mindcrime. So yeah, we'll do that too. We'll have a theme going, but it never really. We broke up not too long after those songs came to fruition, and we moved on. But I love those extra songs, and there's like other stuff too. I mean that we've never released. That demos and things like that. There's a song called "Altar of Temptation" that you could probably see live on YouTube from the Limelight. That was one of the really incredible songs that we did. And we did do it in Josh's studio, but we never released it. So who knows? Maybe it's a B-side somewhere in the future.
Well, I can tell you this: there's a lot of reissue labels out there that would jump on the opportunity. I think because it's been 15 years since the last release, so that and maybe some extra bonus tracks. I can tell you 5 labels right off the top of my head that would be dying to get a hold of this stuff and put it out again. So it's there for you if you want it. And especially like I don't know what the status is now with all you guys, if you're still in touch, everybody's still around, but there are festivals over in Europe that would do anything to put a band like Street Child back together for a one-off show where they fly you over for the weekend, they pay your expenses, and you just play a show. I don't know if that's ever a possibility, but that would be amazing.
And we have heard that. And logistically, it would really have to make sense, because at this stage of the game, like, see, we all do keep in touch. We're all friends. I can, like, Ralph is in Vegas now. I'm in Jersey. Jesse's in Jersey. Nelson's in New York. We're the closest to each other. But to have something like that happen, it would have to be like, look, they'd have to supply like all the equipment, whatever. I don't think Ralph's going to pack up his 18-piece drum kit and send it over to Europe. But and it's great. Like I said, I mean, I'm honored that that's a possibility, but. You know how it is, man. You move on with life. I got 3 kids, and they have their things going on, and Jesse's, doing his thing, whatever, working, and who knows though. I never say never to stuff like this. Music is a funny thing. Like after I left the business with Nelson and Ralph, I didn't pick up a bass for 15 years. I mean, something I did for every day. And then, something else came up, and then somebody asked me if I would do some stuff. And then, yeah, okay, whatever, I'll do it. And then, you get that bug. And, so now, you know how. And Nelson has started playing. Believe it or not, he plays in a rockabilly band. He started his own rockabilly band, and it's really good. I'm like, you know, you could tell it's Nelson because he gets like, you know, some of that off time stuff in there, or, you know, he's the only guy I know that can make rockabilly sound like a Black Sabbath song. It's hysterical.
That's
You
when
know?
you picked up the. I'm a bass player myself, but you know, when you pick up the bass for the first time after all those years, do you try to go back to one of your old songs and try to play it and just completely forget how it goes?
Well, you know, I have to admit it to you, because when I got asked to play with this guy, he needed help with something, and I mean, you've heard the Street Child stuff, you know, some of it's aggressive and fast, you know, and I was, you know, prided myself on keeping up with all those guys. And I picked it up and you know, I put it on. I was like, yeah, you know, just like an old suit, you know. And then all of a sudden, I tried to play some lines from, I think it was Building a Wall, and my hands fell off the fretboard. I mean, it was just ridiculous, you know. So I had to like really, you know, and condition myself again to you know, to play. But you know, it is funny because I think your mind says, yeah, I can do this, and then it's like, well, you know. We can't do that right now, you know. And then, you know, the other things happen too. You know, it's like you're older now, so it's like, you know, I've been wearing this bass for an hour and my shoulder's killing me. You know, that type of thing. You know.
Yeah, it happens. Hey, listen, I stopped playing for 20 years after, you know, I got married and the band broke up and I moved on. And
Yeah.
20 years later, my wife bought me another bass for Father's Day. And I went downstairs, I
Nice.
put on a tape of my old band. I was trying to play a song, and I wrote all the music. And I couldn't remember how to play one song. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember one riff, one line, nothing. I was like, holy cowboy, 20 years really takes a toll
Yeah.
on you.
I know it does, and you know, like I could play most of the Street Child stuff. Some of the other stuff that I did with Nelson and Ralph, which was like, it was more like Rush oriented. You know, like that type of music, very you know, progressive and you know, odd time
Was that
signatures.
Witching Hour?
Witching Hour, yeah. That I mean, I would like to. Nelson and Ralph and I've talked about putting that out on a CD. That was recorded in Brooklyn with this guy on Avenue Z. I can't remember the name of the place, but we used to do it at like midnight, and just so we could, you know, get good, you know, like it was cost effective, you know, and
Absolutely.
we'd come in, yeah, and you know what I mean, and we would come in and play like
Yep.
these, you know, 11-minute songs and things with all these parts and stuff, you know, and that stuff. I mean, I listen to it now. I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna. If I ever had to do it, it would take me a month to woodshed those songs. But I'd like to see, you know, if we could put something out and just, you know, maybe throw it up on Spotify or something like that and see what it is,
Hell
because
yeah.
you know, just to see if it gets any interest, because it's different. It's a lot different from the Street Child stuff, you know. I'm not even saying it's better. It's just different, you know. But the Street Child stuff was definitely more accessible. You know, people see, you know, they gravitate more towards that. It's like the other stuff is musicians' music. That's what I call it. You know, it's like stuff like that. But yeah,
Well, I
some
saw
of
a
the Street
video
Child
of
stuff.
it, and the stuff sounded great. I mean, I saw the video. You had a video up somewhere. I saw the video of you guys playing live somewhere, and you know, it's an old video, but the music sounded great. Was Witching Hour directly after Street Child, or did it come some years later on down the road?
It was directly after. It was. We spent a lot of time in the rehearsal studio because why? You know, Nelson and I were both working for. I mean, you remember this company, Columbia House Record Club. You probably owe money
Absolutely.
every time I
I owe
talk
them
to
a
you.
lot of
I owe
money.
you guys money. You know, you know. I mean, like what I said. You know, it was like office work. You know, and we had. You know, I had the best job of any young musician when I first got there. I was in the inventory department, and my job was to take in all the samples from the record companies. And my boss said to me, she goes, look, we need these samples, but when we're done, we're done. So anything you want, you can have. So that was like,
Oh,
okay.
that was nice.
Yeah, that was nice. And, you know, I mean, I didn't make a lot of money at that time, but, you know, it was the best job I ever had, you know. But, yeah, we were working, and then, you know, things, you're trying to go to rehearsal, but who's got to work late? And then I got an opportunity with some buddies of mine that I grew up with in the neighborhood to open up a restaurant. So I used to do construction building it. We built it with our own hands, so that took a lot. We lost a year as a band, and they were very accommodating. I mean, they understood that I was now involved in a business. So, but then I mean, we played more shows with that band, believe it or not, than Street Child probably, because we did a lot of stuff in Westchester, and we opened up for Overkill. That was one of the bands we opened up for. In a club up there. It's called, I can't remember the name of it. I don't know if it was Streets or something else.
Streets, a New Rochelle.
Might have been. Yeah. Probably Streets. And then, then I remember we opened up for Trickster, and they didn't know what to make of us. We were just a totally different type of band. But yeah, that was it was a fun thing to do. It was very theatrical. And like I said, it made you a better musician. I was even playing the synth pedals like Geddy Lee, because we're all Rush fans, like amazing Rush fans. So, but yeah, I mean, that, and then we even got to. I had a meeting with Lieber and Krebs, who brought in Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and all that stuff, and they came to see. We did a showcase for them. And he liked us, Steve Lieber. He liked us, and he goes, I really like you guys. I'm going to give you to my sons to manage. And I was like, oh, great. And literally, he said, great. One of the sons called me up at work. Yeah, we're going to manage you. And nothing happened. Nothing. Zero. And I just said, you know what? I'm too old for this. I can't do this anymore. And Nelson agreed, and that was it. It was within overnight, everything was done. We're we're packing it in. So that, and that's how it went, and, but music, like I said before, music is a funny thing. If you're a musician, you tend to find it again, so Nelson's doing his thing with, rockabilly. I do stuff here at the Jersey Shore. Ralph has a corporate, rock band out in Vegas. They play conventions, stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, he's making more money than any of us with that stuff. You get a big convention, you can charge whatever you want. But
that's true.
Yeah, But it's all it's all good, man. It's all good memories.
Well, when you go back to the band, packing it in and calling it a day, with Street Child, I mean, was it because of the change? The scene really wasn't changing that much by 91, 92.
No.
The writing was on the wall, but was it just that you felt like it ran its course, it wasn't going to go anywhere,
I think
nothing was going to happen?
It's a question that people ask, and, if you ask 4 different people, they're going to give you 4 different answers, I think that at that point, it was a combination of things. I think that we weren't getting. I always thought that we felt that we were a good band, and things were definitely starting to change a little bit, but we weren't getting any bites. And don't forget. I mean, like I said before, we put a lot of effort into that band because we did not rehearse in Manhattan. We rehearsed in Westchester because Manhattan prices were just we wanted our own studio. Instead of we'll pay hourly, and all that nonsense. So it just made more sense to get something up in Westchester. So we found, I remember the first room we had was in a condemned building, and it was where Anthrax used to rehearse. And we rehearsed up there, but you have to leave work, you have to go across town, get on the train to Westchester, go up there, rehearse for 2.5 hours, have Ralph drive you in his van back to the train, go home, and rinse and repeat 3 times a week, and that, I think we were just getting tired of that. And Nelson started to really want to branch out too and start, doing his own stuff, his own music, and he was, like I said, he was bringing in some really intense stuff, and it was quite interesting, and he had this whole concept of, turning it into more of a theatrical scene, and with the zombie makeup and all that stuff, and, and it was fun while it lasted, but I think as far as Street Child went, I just think it you're right, I think it just ran its course, and when your heart's not in it, and you got to really, get yourself on the train and go rehearsing it. At one point, you go, I'm not doing this anymore. It just, it's not doing it. And, you're going to keep playing the same clubs, night after night. We were at that point too. I mean, who was going to get in a van and, do the country at that point? It's just like, we weren't 18 years old either, So, but I'm just glad that, people still appreciate that music, and I still get, like I said, like mostly through like Facebook and stuff. People saying, "Hey, I just just heard your stuff. I love it." And like I think just the other day, I think it was like 2 days ago, 15 new views. You got 15 new views, and so people are still finding us. I mean, it's really cool.
Well, when you put out good music like that, it does last an eternity. And people always say like, you know what, the band came out at the wrong time because the scene was changing, and hair metal was getting really big in the late '80s, and that kind of imploded upon itself. And if they had come out in '83 or '84, but nobody thought the scene was going to end. Nobody said, you know what, I think at the strike of midnight of 1990, the whole scene is going to implode. Nobody ever thought that. We thought it was going to go on and on forever, because it was getting bigger and bigger. So a band didn't just say, well, I wish it would have came out 5 years ago. That's when it started. That's when you came out, and you thought it was going to go on forever. But you hear this story more often than not. People will talk about, band members didn't get along, they were fighting with each other, they got screwed over by management. That's like a tale of time when it comes to music. But sometimes it happens like you guys said. You just felt like it wasn't happening, it wasn't going to go nowhere. And how much time can we put into it? People don't realize what a grind it is when you're in a band. A band that had, to me, Street Child could have made it. In the right place, the right time. I think you guys could have been humongous because you had the looks, you had the music, you had everything going for you. But it's a grind. And unless you're willing to throw yourself into a van with 3 or 4 other guys and your equipment and travel all over the country begging for food and a floor to sleep on, it's not that easy. Like I said, as we get older, we kind of want a little bit more of the creature comforts. And like I could do without that, And I give credit to the bands that did that for years until they could build up an audience and get to where they are today. I mean, Metallica did it, other bands did it, and it paid off for them, but it doesn't work for everybody.
You tell that story that the bands that did that, and I've had that thought, Mike. I've had that thought of like, you know what, maybe we just shouldn't have, once the album was out, maybe we just should have said the hell with it and got in a van and went around. Who knows? I've had that thought, and but we at that time, nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said, hey, you know what, let's just get in a van and go. And I don't know why. I don't know if that we just didn't have the stomach for it, or I mean, we never even played. I mean, I think the farthest show we ever played was a New Jersey show. And, like you said, a lot of people don't get it. It's like to pack up a van, especially when you're a metal band, you've got tons of equipment, amplifiers, drums, and guitars and all this stuff. And we drove out to New Jersey for a club. I can't remember where it was. And it was pouring rain from the minute we got in the van to the minute we got to New Jersey, set up all the stuff, played the show. And at that time, you probably remember this, but they would give you tickets, and if you handed out tickets to your friends, 20 friends came in, it was like $1 a ticket, right? So we had all this stuff. We played the show, got out there, did all this thing, we're exhausted by the end of the night, and the guy gives us $4. I mean, come on. I mean, what are we doing here? So, but again, when you're young and you're full of piss and vinegar, I mean, it's like, you just, whatever, let's do it, next show, let's go, So, but, that's how it went, man. It's a familiar story. It's a familiar story.
I mean, I used to love being up on stage playing and performing. That's what was the joy, but getting into that van, packing up the equipment, carrying all the drums with the drummer, while the singer just sat around with his microphone in his hand, and you're carrying amplifiers and heads and everything else. And then you're cramped to a van with 2 other bands, so you got like 20 people in a cargo van sitting on top of each other, farting and smelling up the thing, just to travel like 8 hours to upstate New York somewhere to do a show.
Yeah. What's funny is I knew that things were coming to an end too. This was with Witching Hour, because we used to have like when you're a band, everybody wants to be your friend, and help you out and stuff. So we used to have a van and then another truck, and we'd have all this stuff, and we bring all our equipment and the stage stuff and props and whatever, and then I remember probably one of the last shows we ever did, it was just Ralph's van and one guy with a pickup truck. That was it, because who got married, who you don't talk to anymore because you got into an argument, that whole thing, and I'm like, all right, now not only am I have to play the show, but now I got to lift everything, It just at that point you could just see the writing on the wall. What I always said, Mike, when it doesn't become fun anymore, it's time to pack it in, man. It's just not
Absolutely.
worth it at that point. But it's funny how things go full circle, because then look what happened. What was it? 10 years later, people are like, yeah, we know who you are. Okay, and and I don't know what the future. I mean, Jesse holds the master tapes. I don't know what he wants to do with them. I mean, once in a while we do talk about it. The day after you got in touch with me, another guy from Italy was just like, he's talked to me before, and he's like, "Come on, man, I think it needs a proper CD release. It's been a long time, blah blah blah." But I can't make that decision by myself. It has to
Sure.
be, and supposedly those tapes are not in the best of shape. But I know with today's technology, you probably don't need those master tapes. They can probably clean it up, from something, a digital file or whatever.
Oh
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
but you never know. You know what I mean? It's not like we're going to make a
You'll
ton of
know
money off. You know?
when the time is right. You'll know when it's ready to put it out again and give people that, and maybe even the witching hour stuff. And going back to what you were saying earlier, like when you put ads out in the paper looking for a singer, and you couldn't
Hmm.
even find people that knew what metal was Jesse kind of the singer by default? Because when you listen to him sing, he's got
Yes.
such a great voice. But
Well,
did
he
he
had a
know he
great.
had that in him back then?
So, yeah. So no, I mean, I think he just did it out of necessity. And I remember the first time I heard him sing. You got to remember, me and him used to hang out every day. We were buddies, and I didn't even know he could write like that. I knew, like, he still. I used to watch him and his brother. We were like 12 years old, and his brother was probably 15. Him and his brother would just jam Kiss tunes in his brother's bedroom, and Jesse playing guitar and him playing drums. They knew all these Kiss songs and stuff, and but Jesse never opened his mouth to sing or anything. And then we were looking for a singer, but we were doing demos. I used to say it was just me, him, and a drum machine, and I used to say we were the Eurythmics of heavy metal, because we would just constantly guitar, drums, and drum machine and bass. And he would sing this, he would write the lyrics, obviously, and he would sing it out of necessity. And we always wanted to find a singer, and it was so hard. And if you did find, like, we found some really good guys, like guys with these massive voices, but they were what we called mercenaries. So they were like, yeah, I'd like to join, but I got this other band, so I can only rehearse once a week. And it's like, dude, I can't have that. You're either committed or
Yeah.
you're not. I can't. It just it just that's not what we were looking for. I mean, and we would see some bands like at clubs, and the singer was amazing. We'd just go up to them and be like, listen, you want to hear a demo, because we'd love to have you with us. But we couldn't offer them anything. We couldn't say like, hey, we have management, we have a deal, because we would just say, hey, we got this band, it's really good, we think you're great. But and so yes, to answer your question, it became out of necessity. And Nelson has a great voice too, but that wasn't what he was into at that point. He didn't want to sing lead on any of those songs. It was really Jesse. His voice was not the voice of metal in the late '80s, early '90s. He had more of a baritone voice, so it was different. It wasn't what you would think he would sound like, and I think that also added to, I guess, the street child sound, I guess you would call it. That voice was of its own. Nobody else really sounded like that.
That's true, and you had a unique sound. That's what made the band stand out, I think, and gave you that kind of street cred. Because every band that comes out towards the late '80s was starting to repeat what other bands before them did. I think you guys
Yeah.
had a completely different sound. I mean, metal sound, rock sound, but completely different. And maybe it was his voice, but I think as a whole, as a unit, you guys created something that wasn't happening, I think, in the late '80s, and that's why I fell in love with the band.
Yeah, I think that the band itself had its own sound, and what that sound is. I mean, I've tried to put my finger on it. I know there's a lot of Jesse was a big Thin Lizzy fan. I think that the sound that we had kind of showed that '70s hard rock, but with kind of like a metal mentality, I guess you would, something like that. It was definitely a cross between like 80s metal and 70s hard rock, which I love. I mean, I love all that stuff. I think that's, if I had to put my finger on it, I would say it's that. Now, would somebody else agree with me? I don't know. But that's how I felt about it, because you had Ralph, who was he was a hard-hitting drummer. He was a metal drummer, and that's what we were looking for, But he also understood odd timing, and Nelson would be able to, and if he didn't get it right away, Nelson would say, "Listen, this is what I'm looking for," and he would find it. His style, his drumming style, was perfect for what we were doing. It just, I enjoy it. And he and I played together. Like, it got to the point where he and I would just make the same mistakes at the same time. It was so weird, It was like we had one brain,
You were in sync together, absolutely.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard that happen before.
Yeah.
You guys went, I think, in a different direction than a lot of bands too, because most bands back then would record a demo tape, try to circulate it within the underground scene to get it out there, or send you guys went right for a record right off the bat. And and you self-financed it yourself, which was kind of not really done at that time. People always look for a label, whether it was small or big, because it was an expense. So I can only imagine what it cost to put out 500 records, and artwork for the cover, everything that came with the package back then. It was a big risk to take.
It was a learning experience because again, everything was done through music magazines. We had to find a place. Like, once we recorded the music at Josh's, we had to find a place that would press into an album, and we didn't want to do a cassette because we wanted something big to land on someone's desk. And we found so the actual artwork was done by a friend of ours, this guy Steve Chang. He actually painted it on a canvas. And I don't know how big the canvas was. I don't know if it was like 4x4 or something like that. And so you're lugging around a canvas to Pennsylvania so they can take a picture of it, because they were cheap, And I forgot who we had print it, because it had to be mastered, for the vinyl and all that stuff. And this was like a labor of love because we get in a car. I don't even know who would drive us at that time, but I think my father helped us out with something one time. And, okay, we're going to have we'll have the painting put, into this, manageable thing for an album here in New York, but then we have to drive to Pennsylvania to get the tape mastered. And, and all of a sudden it becomes, then who's going to print everything? Who's going to print the 500? So, again, I mean, it was a great memory because it was a labor of love. I mean, you watch something from the very beginning, and then all of a sudden these boxes show up at Jesse's house, and it's the album, which is really cool. It was something to be proud of. So, it was very memorable. I'll put it that way.
Did you think, I mean, by doing all that, I guess, when you think about it, it's kind of like a marketing thing too, where you're marketing the band as, hey, listen, we're sending this album to a label because, we could do all this on our own. Look what we could accomplish, by ourselves. Imagine what we could do working for you guys and you putting out the record. Was that like a thought process behind it also?
I don't think so. I think it was really just, let's get this out there to as many what we thought were important people as possible and some fans, because we did give out some. When we played in Westchester, we would have maybe 10 albums with us, let's say, and we'd throw them out to the crowd, and God knows what happened to them. But we didn't even really, on eBay, yeah. They're on eBay, and I mean, I get asked all the time from fans, hey, you got an album for me? You got an album for me? I'm like, no. Had I known, you know what I mean, I would have bought my daughter a car with 10 of those, but I know my sister has one. I think Nelson's got a couple, more, like I said, I mean, I know I have one in a frame. I might have one in a pile of vinyl that I kept from somewhere, but, I think Jesse's got one or two. We just didn't think that it was going to hit like that. It's funny because I've done other interviews, and I don't know if you know this, but I was interviewed for a book by this guy. He's
Alex.
I think it's Alex. Yeah,
Alex,
and
I'm pretty sure he's a friend. Yeah.
yeah, and he's a great guy. And I remember him like reaching out to me and saying like, if I would, do this, answer these questions, and for this book. And I'm like, a book? Are you kidding me? I'm like, they're like, sure, why not? I'll do it. And usually when I get questions, it's usually like 10 questions from somebody. They have a little fanzine, and they'll ask me some. This guy sent me like 35 questions. I'm like, dude, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
So I would just sit there and answer them like while my son was having wrestling practice, And the book is great, but every time somebody says like they'll use the phrase like like this type of album, it's the Holy Grail, or one of the Holy Grails of collectors. I still can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, it's just so weird to me that I'm like because in that book, I don't know what he's got, like 1,000 bands that he mentions in that book, and I think we're like the second or third band in. Yeah, and that book and what subsequently followed really hit home, like how many people really know who the band is, and I was just like, wow, this is really weird, and but yeah, it is a collector's item, and I think that the re-release it's not a collector's item, but it got snapped up really quick, and I know a lot of it got thrown out on eBay and stuff like that, but that I got no control over that. It is what it is. I'm just glad that those other songs got out there because I think that they're really good songs.
Oh, on the re-release, absolutely. And that's the great thing about it is like, you say yourself, where were all these people in 1989 that are such fans of the band today?
In Europe.
Where were they back then when we could, where we could have used them? But like you
Yeah,
said, if
they
we
were
had
in
the
Europe.
internet back then, you would have made those contacts. This might have been a
Yeah.
whole different story if you were able to reach out, but it was impossible it was impossible. You couldn't even call New York to Florida. It was a long distance phone call back then. It would cost a fortune. You called from New York
Yeah.
to New Jersey because a lot. I remember I made a phone call one time to interview a band in Florida in 1985. I was on the phone for like an hour. My father comes in. He's like, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "I'm talking to this guy Ronnie in Florida. He's in a band." He beat the hell out of me. Hung up the phone because the bill came in. It was like a couple
Like
$100.
a $30 call, which was a lot of money back
Yeah,
then.
now-
It's like
Now today you call China and talk to them over there for hours for free. It's just
Yeah.
it's a whole different
Yeah,
world.
I know. I used to work for Vonage, and it's just like, people calling, all over the world from here for like, $10 a month. It's like, back then, you don't take these things into consideration because it was so long ago. Like things like just information in general, it was just like harder to get. I was just explaining to my son what the yellow pages were. This is how we found stuff. Oh, you want to go to you want to find a gym? Well, this is you look in the yellow pages. Oh, these are the ones that are around you. You want to find martial arts. This is where you go. So it's not like, hey, all the kids today, they just type it in on their phone and they get everything they want. And it wasn't easy to market a band the way you could today. It's just, I can throw music up on any site right now if I want to, and people will find it, and it's that easy. But, there's other things that, to take into consideration with that because everything is saturated. I mean, how are you really going to get somebody to hear you? But, I mean, it was what it was, man, and we did our best. I think a lot of times, too, people underestimate the being at the right place at the right time or having that one break.
Yeah.
All you needed was that one A&R guy that heard you to say, hey, and we never found that guy. We never found that person. Which is a shame because I think that, they would have done something. But then again, you're talking about going into 1991, Alice in Chains just replaced Warrant on the Wall. That's a famous story,
I love that. I saw that on VH1. I love that. They had the cherry
Yeah.
pie post up there. It came in a couple weeks later. It was gone, and they were over.
That story says it all. That story says it all.
Yep.
And
Yep.
some of that stuff I really liked. I mean, I liked some of the grunge stuff, but that said it all. And you know how it is, Mike. Some of that stuff was getting way too. The hair metal stuff was just getting, the glam metal was just getting way too campy. It just lost its way. And it was ripe for a change at that point. But I just think that maybe, like you said, I mean, I wish we would have done something in 1984 instead of 1989. I mean, it probably would have been maybe a little bit different. But we weren't in that space. Yeah, we just weren't, but we weren't there. I mean, we were, Jesse wasn't there as a songwriter. He wasn't writing stuff like that. I mean, in '84, I don't even think I was playing with Jesse. I think I was playing with somebody else at that point. But it just, it's timing, man. They said the old saying, "Timing is everything."
Sure. You know what? Sometimes even that doesn't work out. Like you were saying, having the right management people behind you to help you out and moving you along, and the right A&R people there. Listen, I can't
Yeah.
remember what the club was in Manhattan. It was on '84. Anthrax, Metallica, and Raven played. All three
Yeah.
bands after the show got signed to major labels. Anthrax went to Elektra, Raven, and I think it was Atlantic and Island for Anthrax. Metallica
Yeah.
exploded after that. A couple of years later, they're the biggest band in the world probably today, and not just in the rock and metal genre. Raven couldn't make it happen. They fell apart, and they just relegated to. They're still playing till today, but they're relegated to underground. So Anthrax, had their ups and downs. They kind of rode the middle of the road, but even when that happens, it still doesn't make it a guarantee.
No, exactly. I mean, it's just like you said. I mean, look at that. Look at what happened, right? They had people that came to the show. I think a lot of times when we were playing, I mean, yeah, we played Manhattan, a lot. I mean, we played, but it was mostly relegated to very few clubs. Like, we played the Limelight twice. I don't know if you remember this club, but it was called Zone DK.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was Zone DK was down in the 20s, like on 11th Avenue, and then there was Chevy's. And we would play like on the weekends, but they had crowds, but there was like they weren't pulling A&R people. I think A&R people at that stage of the game were looking for something different. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's the way I feel about it right now. We probably could have done better if we had somebody to manage us, but that's always a crapshoot. You never know what you're getting. So hey, I can do this for you. Just give me there was no money to be had, so nobody's gonna rip you off. We were
That's
broke,
true.
but but yeah, I mean, this is all stuff you look back on, and you're like, well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Just but you don't know in the long run. You don't know why nothing happened. There's a lot of things going on, and I mean, I knew bands back then that were local that got signed, and nothing happened. I mean, yeah, I got a spec deal with this, with this management company, or hey, we're showcasing for this, and then nothing happens. I mean, and you know how those record companies were back then. Some guy signs you, 3 weeks later he gets fired, you're done. There's nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a real messed up business, man. And I always said, I hope my kids don't want to do anything like this. And of course, when you say something like that, like my oldest daughter has she has like an incredible voice. She's already been to she spent like 2 weeks in Florida with a Juilliard program, and I'm just like, I tell her,
Nice.
I'm like, honey, you have to have a tough skin, man. You have to really, it's not going to be easy, especially for the theater stuff that you want to do, But I'm not going to discourage her. I mean, she's, when you're a musician, dude, people can tell you 10 ways to Sunday, you're wasting your time. You don't listen, it's like, it's not how it works. It's not how it works. You get, you're like, I gotta do what I gotta do. So, it's, but yeah, I mean, you can replay these scenarios in your head for hours, and none of it's going to make sense as to why something didn't happen. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't really bother me. I'm just happy, honestly, that there are people and the other guys feel the same way. They're very happy and honored that people still want to listen after all this time. And it makes me feel really good that there's still young people out there that are listening to metal. I just think it's awesome, because there was a time when I was like, well, that ship sailed. Nobody's going to be listening to this except for old guys, like me. But they're out there, man, and it's really like you said, like I know those festivals in Europe, and they still draw people, dude.
Yeah, thousands.
Europe never they never let go of that, and then kudos to them. I have to love it. I love it.
I like what you said, because there's a whole like our kids' age and their kids' age, and they're into metal today. They're into the classic metal and the rock from the 70s and 80s, where I couldn't find myself in the 80s listening to my father's doo-wop music from back in the 50s and 60s, or my mother's Frank Sinatra or Louis Prima. I couldn't listen.
Nah.
I mean, I grew up listening to it, but but they want their parents' music. I think they realize when they hear the stuff that's out today that that's real music. I mean, you can hear a lot of stuff today and say, what the hell are these guys doing?
Yeah.
There's no melodies, there's no hooks, nothing catchy, but they latched onto it. And that's a great thing, because you know what? It might keep it going to the next generation. Music is generational. It comes and goes, but metal made a nice comeback. And is it ever going to be like in the 80s? No. But you know what? There's that diehard younger audience and the old timers like us that still pay attention, give it time, and listen to it. So maybe it never will die. Who knows?
Well, metal in and of itself is a very, it's a very emotional, like it really hits people a certain way. When you're young, right? What are you? You're full of aggression. You're full of hormones. You're going to, and this is the music that is going to hit you. I think that's really where that comes from, and that's a cliche. I know it's been said before, but I think it makes the most sense. I think that there are kids out there that they hear that really driving music, and it's just like, ugh, I know where it's coming from, and it's just a shame, though. I don't see it a lot in here. I think, like I said, we have a lot of fans in South America and Central America, and I could, because they friend me on Facebook, and these are all young people, man. They're not like our age. And it's the same thing with Europe too. I mean, although Europe, I laugh because a lot of the guys that friend us that like the page, they're like 50s and stuff, 60s, and but for some, it seems like there's a kind of a big audience in South America, a young audience, late teens, early 20s, and you hear the metal bands go down there, man. They're filling big venues, and they're rabid fans. So it's a hot spot down there, which is kind of cool, actually.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, listen, I'm going to let you go because I'm going to add a couple of songs to this interview, and I got to get to bed. It's past my bedtime. I'm an old man these days. So, but
dude,
man, it was great talking to you. Listen, you gave us one of the greatest albums ever recorded 35 years ago, and I know we'll see it again one day. You'll do something, but thanks for the music. And listen, I'm still playing it all these decades later, so you guys did something right.
I appreciate that, Mike. I thank you for having me, and it was really a lot of fun talking to you, man. And we really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best, buddy.
You too, my friend. And maybe I'll catch you down near the Jersey Shore one day when I head out there.
Sounds good, brother. We'll grab a beer and talk about all the aches and pains we have, man.
You got that. Take care, Rob. It's good talking to you, buddy.
All right, brother. Yep, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Innocent and young, flown to the street, terrified and lost, we bark at the moon. Drunk and stoned, we found our way in the dark, in the dark. Dead and sick, life in the fumes. We fell to our knees at the tower, beg for mercy, begging for mercy. Oh, street child, what have you lost? Child, for your way back home. Below the lights, below monoliths of modern times we bleed. The blood of generations poured free. Wrapped in chains and bound by hate we scream. And it echoes, yeah. Street child, whoa, street child. Yeah, street child, whoa, street child. Secrets, but it's so hard to tell, so hard to keep from me. You took me down the road of agony. Walking tall, our heads were held up high, but we stumbled, yeah. Street child, oh, street child. Yeah, street child, oh, street child. And in our dreams we walk on water. We felt the need to believe, but in the desert we were reckless. And the last page of our lives were lost in the heat. It crumbled to dust. Street child, oh, street child. But yeah, street child, oh, street child. Yeah, street child. You thought the world was forgiving, street child. But the mess in your head made a mess of your heart, street child. Laughing at life, yeah, you took it for granted, street child. You finally found your way back home. Yeah, street child. Just looking for your way, looking for your way back home. Yeah, you're just a street child, street child. Yeah, street child.
try to squeeze one in there before we get to the next interview. Merciful Fate with Nuns Have No Fun. We had Street Child with Street Child, and we started off with Temple of Set. And, this has been a great 17 years. I hope I live long enough to give you another 17 more. I think other people might feel differently about that, but we're here every week, so come and join us. But just to remind everybody, next week, Thomas Campioli from Lace Dragon and Richie Cavaliera from Insider, I guess. They'll both be on live next week, so don't forget to tune in. And before we get to the next interview with the world's oldest and only living vampire, James Rivera, I have to thank Iman and John and Christian for joining me in the chat room every week. We don't get a lot of people in the chat room, a lot of people listen on the outside, but if it wasn't for these three guys joining me week after week, especially Iman and John, since the very beginning, I mean, they make me want to do this show. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. I love you with all my heart. But let's get to James Rivera right now. Before we do that, let's play a song off his band Dagger's Edge. This was a demo he put out, I think, around 86, 87, while Helstar was on a little hiatus, if you want to call it that. We'll play Sonic Thunder from that demo. We'll talk to James. We'll try to squeeze in one more tune before we wrap it up here tonight. So there's a lot going on. We're trying to do it real quick. So here you go.
York accent any
Oh,
old day.
yeah. It's been a little
This,
while.
this is Mike. I'll squeeze your fucking head. Yeah, yeah.
It's been a little bit, my friend, but I'm glad to have you back on here.
Yeah, yeah. New Yorkers don't they don't hit you with baseball bats anymore. They don't even shoot you. They just squeeze your head till your eyes. Yeah.
Hey, well, listen, they need to change your name to James Brown Rivera because you are the hardest working man in showbiz, my friend.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I try to be anyways, I mean, it's getting harder and harder as these bones are getting older and older and the centuries are passing by and
Hey, but listen, you're still out there. You're still doing it. You sound better than ever. You look great. So it's all working out. And we got the Devil's Masquerade. I mean, 9 years. I mean, it's been a long time since the last Helstar. So you finally did it.
Yeah, and the last time we talked, I think that you and I talked when Clad in Black came out. So we were kind of like, and then of course we put out the first single, The Black Wings of Solitude. And then that kind of killed a little time. Then we did the EP with 3 new songs. Well, actually Black Wings again on it. And then we did a couple of covers just for shits and giggles, as we say down here in Texas. And then the re-release of Vampiro because we felt that it didn't get enough attention. And, so at that point, we're like, okay, we really need to do the new record. And if you remember me telling you that the new songs, that new album was going to include the 3 on Clad in Black. But the way we thought about it at the end, we were like, man, that's kind of unfair to the fans, and that's being lazy on our end. Okay, I mean, how much better is Black Wings of Solitude gonna get? So they're gonna hear it for the 3rd time on a record again.
Yeah.
And so Larry said, no. He put his foot down and says, dude, we're gonna write a whole complete new record. That's it. And that's what took so much time because whereas in the beginning when we thought, well, we have 3 in the can, that only leaves maybe 6, 7 more to write. We ended up writing all brand new songs. And then at that point, once that took about another year or so, then we have to face that ugly monster reared its head, and
Yeah.
Andrew Atwood, exited the band, and he had about 3 or 4 songs for the new record. And because we left on good graces, he said, hey, but you're welcome to keep my songs because I don't want you guys to be, like in a position where you're going to be without all this. But Larry decided, no, man, we saw what happened with Mustaine and Metallica, and we don't want this biting us in the ass later. He says, we're going to write 4 more new songs. And he had material hidden in the coffin chest I didn't know about. And so we immediately started working, and that took another process. So when you add all that together, you can see easily 6, 7 years going by.
Yeah.
And then Massacre was going through some political problems that took another whole year and a half. So the album was finished and handed to them a year and a half ago. And so that's what took so long.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, you and Larry go back to the beginning of this thing and, you've got that kind of relationship where you can work together the way you do. I mean, what's changed from the early days till now with you guys in the songwriting?
Well, see, that's what it is that what's changed is that we've gone back to, as we say, and again, another Texas saying, I'm a proud Texan, sorry. We took the bull by the horns and we said from here on out, we will pretty much write everything together again. Berrigan Rivera. So when you have other people with their opinions coming in that are in the band and they're not bad, you find that you have more conflict. And then it seems to take longer to get things done. But me and Larry have a mystical, magical relationship, and we know how to think alike, and we feel each other alike, that when he sends me a song and I send him my idea of the verse and the pre-chorus and the chorus, he'll text me back and go, dude, that's exactly what I was thinking. So there's no arguments, you just roll with it. Let's go. Let's just keep moving. Let's just do it then,
Well, after 4+ decades, you two guys got to be on the same page, with everything that's going on. You got to
Yeah,
know,
4 decades later, I
yeah,
know,
what's in
right?
each
Yeah.
other's heads. So I mean, that's a plus. But
Yeah. We're in
we,
each, yeah, you're right. That's a nice way to put it. We're in each other's heads, hearts, and soul. And I'm like, well, do you want people to think that we're, no, we're not gay. He's been married to me longer than he's been married to his wife. But hey, it's a musical marriage, and that's a beautiful thing, you know.
and it works. You're talking about like, there was the movie Rockstar where, Mark Wahlberg brought in the song like, no, me and TC write all the songs. They were the two main, the singer and the guitar player from the band, and they
Yeah,
took care of all of that. So, I mean, you guys sort of have the same situation going on, but how do you
yeah.
include the newer guys? Even though, I mean, outside of your new guitar player, the other guy's been in the band for 10 years or better. So how do you include them, make them feel like you're a part of the band? We want you to contribute, but yet, we still kind of have to make the decisions. We kind of drive the machine.
Yeah, no. They well, you praise them as much as you can. And the new guitar player, he totally understands, but he's got some ideas. Now, the way that we say it is that, look, whatever your ideas are, you're going to work those out with Larry first. Then Larry's going to only approve what he feels is going to keep the traditional Hellstar sound and image completely 300% alive. And I'm sure that Junior, well, we call him Mijo, which is Spanish for my son.
Yeah.
He knows how we write. I mean, he knows our music backwards. He's been listening to Hellstar since he was in a crib. And so, he's not going to deliver something that doesn't fit what we're supposed to be doing, And so what'll happen is, then we say, hey, but you know what? Can't wait to work with you. And I'll tell him, hey, maybe I'll come by your house because he doesn't live too far from me and show me what you got. And then we'll represent it to Larry, and then Larry will take it. Or you get together with Larry and go, hey, I have this riff. This is what I'm thinking for a new Hellstar song. And then just kind of, he is so thrilled that he is in the band, period. And so, like I said, the majority of it is making them feel like family right out the gate. We love you. You're great. You came in at the right time as a lifesaver. And, I mean, that's basically, how we feel about Mijo. He's just an extraordinary guitar player. He's a prodigy.
He is good. I mean, somebody wanted me to ask, like, why do you focus so much on vampires throughout the music, throughout the albums and the music? I'm like, because they're freaking vampires. I mean, wait, is there any other answer besides that?
Yeah, well, what's funny is that this new record is not all about vampires for a change.
No, it's not. A few
Yeah,
songs.
and someone asked me, well, is it another concept record? So for me to say no, it's not at all would be a lie. But subconsciously it is because it is horror movie themed. That's what the album is all about. So yes, I got to have my little say so with some vampirism in a couple of songs, but the majority of the record, which why the title fits it very well, and after we thought about the title, is about demonic possession, evil entities, evil spirits. There's even a song from a Twilight Zone episode, but it is all related to the devil. And so at one point, we thought about this title called Bring Me the Priest, which would have been cool.
Yeah.
But then it only would have fit one song, which was Seek Out Your Sins. And so the Devil's Masquerade kind of rounds it all up. Like, okay, this is my party now. I mean, come on. Well, if you think about it, vampires are Dracula's, their god is the devil.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's still all tied in one way.
It's an unknown concept or an undisclosed concept on there.
Exactly.
But most of your records over the years have been that way, whether they were meant to be concept records or not. Every
Yeah.
song sort of tells a story, which makes the entire album, I mean, like a chapter, and the whole album is a book. I mean, you've always
Yes.
managed to do that, whether it's intentional or not, I don't know, but there's always that underlying tone that everything goes together or belongs together.
And what's weird is that once we're done with all the songs, and then you read the stories, and then because you're right, they're all stories. Then sometimes the title of the record is the last thing, like in this case. And that's what happened. All the songs were written, all the subjects were written, and the next thing you know, I was like, Larry, was I can't think of another better title than The Devil's
Yeah.
Masquerade. You know, yeah, he was like, dude, that's it. So then we give it to the artist, the title of the record. Then he wants the lyrics to the songs. And then he comes up with the artwork, which is just beautiful. I mean, it's one of the strongest covers we had in a long time. It's just, I mean, the T-shirts are just selling like crazy, you know, and it's just, it all just came together. And, you know, that's basically what happens, how we do things. We think it out and we don't want to rush it, but we want it to make sense as a package for the whole thing.
Evil always sells. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I know, especially
we live in a world that couldn't be more evil than it is these days,
exactly. And you know
and
what?
it
People
fits.
thrive on evil, and that's just the way this world is now, you know, and I hate to admit that, but it is.
It's true. But moving away from evil for a little bit, I mean, a few years ago, you granted us this metal wave. And when you came out that I shook my head at first. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, new wave and metal mixed together. But then I said, it's you. So you're going to make it work and it's going to happen. And that was like one of my favorite records that came out that year because you just blew me away with what you did with those new wave
Songs.
songs. And I know we were talking about it, and I hope that there's going to be another record, that follows this one up because
Yeah,
it's too good
there's
that I think you tapped into over here.
Yeah, we as far as the metal wave camp, which involves Larry and Garrick as well, and the other members that are outsiders. We're already poking in with some other songs from a lot of the same artists on the album, but different songs now. And so we want to get around to doing it again. The whole thing with metal wave is it turned into a very nostalgic act. And it only plays when it's necessary and it fits what's going on. For example, if Peter Murphy came to Houston, the promoter would probably say, hey, I'd like Metal Wave to open up that show. Then we'd be on it in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? So when it first came out and the first shows we did, there was a lot of people that didn't get it, but then they got it. And then there was a lot of people that all of a sudden loved it. And then there was a few people that were like, I never cared for those bands when they were new wave, and you got to deal with that, and that's fine. Like, yeah, well, yeah, I could see that wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt and you didn't care about Depeche Mode. So yeah,
I
but,
get that.
but we never had anybody say it sucked and it was stupid or no. Most people were like, but man, what you guys did to the songs, now I kind of like them. And I'm like, oh, well, see, there you go. So it put a different spin on the originals of those bands.
Absolutely.
And I
You know,
love those. I love all those bands, like you and I talked, and I just adore those bands. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. What it is they still have a dark image. So, we're not doing like Boy George or anything like that, So we're doing bands that it sort of had a dark image. And when you really go back and listen to especially their older stuff from each one of those bands, there wasn't really a lot of happy stuff going on, So they were dark themselves, and but they did it in a popular way that was selling more, I guess, at the point for them.
sure, you got to listen to some of those lyrics and you realize it wasn't really wasn't meant to be a pop
No,
oriented
not at
song, but
all.
you got to do a Culture Club song. I mean, even if you,
Well, eventually I got to figure out what song he's saying that where he was real depressed and we might find one, Yeah.
I'm sure you will, but I mean, even when was people that know you and know, I mean, you've been a part of so many bands over the years. I can't even name them all right now. I mean, I just know with New Eden and then with Malice and Killing Machine and Distant Thunder and Destiny's End and Hellstar and Denim and Leather for a little bit. And then Dagger's Edge, my favorite from back in 1987. I mean,
Jesus.
you've been a part of so many things. So people have to say, you know what? I know James is going to deliver. I mean, it may not be what we think it's going to be because it's like, new wave music, but he's going to
Yeah.
deliver. And you did. So, I mean, did people
Thank
still
you.
doubt
Well,
you at
you
this
know what?
time?
You know what? You're one of the first guys that brought that project up and admired it with a lot of love, and I'm grateful for that because yeah, it was a double-edged sword. I knew there was going to be a bunch of haters, but I knew there was going to be a bunch of lovers, and I figured I just went on the policy of what my dad brought me up with when I was a child, And that was, he had a bunch of World War II sayings when I grew up. One of them was bullshit, Willie. I don't know who Willie was, but then there was give him hell, Harry. And then I was like, who the hell is Harry? And then somebody goes, dude, that's Harry Truman. Oh, that's what that means. Yeah. And then he had another one called either shit or get off the pot. That meant like, hey, either do what you're going to do or move on,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he had, give him, I'll tell you another goddamn thing. And then he had this one that he always said, son, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time, and fuck them.
That's right. My wife says that to me every night in bed, so I'm used to that saying.
Yeah, so when I put that out, I thought about my dad saying, and then I go, there's going to be people that ain't going to like it. There's going to be people that are going to love it. There's going to be people go, well, this is interesting. It's not bad. I mean, now I want to go back and listen to these original bands, which we did, had a lot of people that did that. They're like, dude, I never knew that, that they had a song called Black Celebration. I go, I know, because you're used to when they became very popular
Yeah.
and their songs got more commercial. And I said, but if you go back and listen to old Depeche Mode, they were pretty damn dark. And I was like, oh, wow. Now, this one guy even texted me, he says, dude, I just bought Black Celebration. It's a killer record.
There's a lot of teenagers out there that weren't around when any of that came out. It wasn't even around when
No.
Helstar started or some of your other bands started, but they're discovering this music for the first time. So your versions of what they're hearing is actually the first versions they're hearing of these songs. So for them to
Yeah, and
go
they're,
back
they're
and
thinking
find them,
that's what it's going to sound like. And I was, well, it's
huh?
a little
What?
different. It's a little different, but remember what, as I told you, I did focus on keeping the melodies and the choruses, everything identical.
Yeah.
It was just everything that went underneath it was metal. So when we had some new waivers that showed up, because there was a lot of new waivers that, were interested. They were like, what? So some metal band took these songs and turned them metal. I got to go check this out. But once they heard it and we were playing it and they realized that the melody was exactly the same, the chorus was exactly the same, maybe with a little bit more range in the voice, the next thing you know, the audience is singing along. And we had several people, they're like, dude, I'm not a metal person at all. I was a new wave guy, but what you guys did tonight was phenomenal. It's genius. I said, oh, well, thank you, thank you, that's all you can say is like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, don't you think after all these years in the business and all the bands you've played that you've kind of earned the right to do what you want to do? I mean, I listened to an interview with Def Leppard a long time ago, and the guy interviewing says to them, a lot of your fans don't like the direction the band's going. It's more of a commercial poppy band compared to those early records. And somebody jumped up and said, don't you think after like 30 years of doing this, they've earned the right to do what they want to do that makes them happy and what they like? And I took that in. I was like, you're right. I mean, I'm not a fan of those later records, and I love the earlier records, but they broke they made their way. They paid their dues and they made it the way they
Yeah.
wanted to. So don't you think after all these years, you should be able to do what you want to do, and the fans that are fans of you should just go along for the
Exactly. I
ride?
mean, and that's exactly why I did Metal Wave. I said 90% of the James Rivera fan base, let's just put it that way, like you, they're going to go, well, this is odd, but you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, he obviously is doing it for a good reason. He's not doing it to make a fool out of himself. There's going to be a positive uh, outcome of this because it's James Rivera. He's not going to put out something stupid, And so I think that's what happened too, is a lot of people in Europe loved it. They were like, wow, is Metal Wave ever going to tour Europe? We're like, I don't know, I mean, as a big market for that kind of stuff, especially in Berlin and stuff like that. So, I mean, who knows? Some dark wave, metal wave, festival. Hey, I know that the promoter in Bochum, Germany, and his wife, they love the metal wave thing, and they were this close to flying us there for a festival they do, but the expenses were way out of their control because we couldn't get any other shows. But there are people that are just kind of like blown away with the project. It's weird.
Well, I'm looking forward to more, and getting back to Hellstar. I mean, touring is always a costly and expensive thing these days, whether you have to buy onto a tour or sell tickets or have you do it. Hellstar is beyond that, I think, right now. But
Yeah.
how difficult is it to get the band out on the road for like these long stretches of time? Is it even possible to do anymore?
Well, we're touring Europe in November through December, and The logistics are costing a little bit more to do the tours. So you have to decide, do you, I mean, are we going to go over there and come home rich? No, we're not. Are we going to go over there, at least come home and pay the bills like I normally would if I'm sitting at home doing my stupid work from home sales job? I should say stupid. That's not right. Take that off. But, my regular sales job at home, and you have to look at it and go, well, as long as we can do that, I'm okay. We're all okay with doing it. It's like, yeah, because we love going out on the road. We love playing music. Obviously, we would have quit a long time ago. We know we're not going to get rich doing music anymore. That ship has gone and sailed, unfortunately. But then you're always in the back of your head, or sometimes it depends what kind of dream you have at night, and you see yourself driving a badass Corvette and going like, oh, wow, it's too bad that was not real. And yeah, and now I'm living in Rome or, wherever, yeah, my dream place to live is in Iceland. And, yeah, you think, well, maybe one day, you never know, that one song or that one album might catapult you to that. But, we're beyond that fantasy world of, are we going to become rich rock stars? No, we're probably going to leave the world with a legacy, which is more important than money.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the 80s are gone. We all know that. But, our music has made a great comeback over the last 20 years. And there's a whole new young audience that are into it and everything. So that's the bright part about it. But do you feel like it's actually easier today for the band because you don't have that pressure of, we got to appeal to the record label. We got to appeal to this audience. We got to make it happen. We got to do it. We're living and dying from record to record to make it. Is it just easier now? You say, hey, you know what? We get together. We write music. You write good music,
Yeah.
great music, and we're having fun doing it. That pressure is not on us anymore.
Basically, in a nutshell, it's kind of become our high profile golf game. But you know what? I don't have to spend a bunch of money on golf clubs and golf balls. So it's an entertainment to ourselves. It's a love, it's a passion. It's something that we do as we can do it when time's allowed. And that's another reason why it took so long to put this record out. You have people that are like, oh, dude, I'm on this serious work project. I can't come to the studio for 3 months. Or, I got to go out of town. Everybody's, some of us are grandparents now. And, oh, the kid's birthday. I can't come over this weekend. So you have all that going on. But at the same time, you're surviving in the real world, with your day job, and so you're happy, and then you sort of just use your vacation time to go, well, let's pick a time when everybody can go on tour, and let's give it to the agent, and let's go do it. What do you guys think? Heck yeah. And we're getting older and older, so it's kind of like that comedy movie, Old Grumpy Men or something like that. And we bitch more on the road too. Hey, where's my goddamn bananas? I mean, come on, it's on the rider, yeah. And the tour manager's like, that's the most important thing for James is his banana in the morning, and he's going to be pissed if those bananas are not here.
That's too much.
Got to have my potassium for my bones,
Yeah. I get that. The bones are really important when you hit a certain age. You gotta take care of it as much as the voice. Jay, when you think about all the records that you've put out over the years, with Helstar, talking about Helstar alone, I mean, I'll go back to the first record, Burner Star, even though the first time I heard you guys is when the demo came out in 83, and Burner Star, it's the band's first record. So it always has a special spot in my heart because that was the first thing you put out.
Right.
I mean, is there any one record that you really feel defines the band? I mean, because, I can't compare Vampiro to Burning Star or Remnants of War, because they're all great records in their own right. You never disappoint with what you put out, but they're just different eras of the band.
I would say that Remnants probably really started identifying the band's future signature. And that's because it got more technical and it got more heavier and it got darker. And then by the time the Distant Thunder came out, we really polished it up, and Nosferatu took it over the top. And But I would say that Remnants probably is the album that identified the band's direction. And if you listen to, all the songs on Devil's Masquerade, there's songs on there that do remind me of our Remnants period, you know? Uh, there's like a song that reminds me of our Burning Star period, So it of course there's a lot of songs that remind me of Distant Thunder and Vampiro and Nosferatu too as well. It's just that I think that Remnants was the album that really marked our identity and like, okay, this band, this is what Texas metal is really all about.
Wow.
Because I think when Burning Star came out, it was a great record, like you said, but it was very, very Judas Priestess. And so it didn't really have its quite own identity. And I will admit that. Well, that was our favorite band at the time and Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
So yes, we didn't sound like a band that was stealing ideas completely from those bands, but you could tell that that album has the ingredients in it that these guys must have been big Judas Priest fans, big Iron Maiden fans, and big Angel Witch fans. And if somebody was to tell me that about Burning Star, I'd say, dude, you're in the family. Come on over here.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You're exactly right. You know what? Yeah,
those were the bands that we had before that album that influenced us.
exactly.
Those were the bands there weren't a lot of other bands out. I mean, there were, but it was just starting
Yeah,
out. Those were the bands that we grew up with.
right. Exactly. And so when Burning Star came out, and then, I mean, almost like at the same timing, the first Queensryche EP came out. And then I had a lot of people saying, hey, so you must really like that. I go, I never even really heard of them. I said, no, I didn't. We didn't. They're a great band. We're blown away with Queensryche. Of course, we love what they're doing, but no, we weren't. We weren't following what they're doing. We're already doing our own thing. And I think anybody back then with bands came out with high vocals. I mean, you all got compared to each other anyways. And
True.
I remember when I couldn't tell the difference between Queensryche, Halloween, and I can go on down the list. I call them the Canary Singers, which that's not an insult. That's a badass thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all kind of had that real over-the-top operatic style.
Well, between Burn and Stone, Remnants of War, I think there was about a 2 year gap in between there. So was it just a natural growth of all you guys coming together and understanding each other more musically, what you wanted to accomplish?
Yeah,
Or
and then
is
we
there
went through a whole band change too, you remember?
true,
So
but I mean, was there a concerted effort to sound different, or it just was a natural growth?
yeah, Larry got really mesmerized with San Antonio Slayer.
Great
And
band.
then he turned up the volume to his songwriting. And that's why Remnant sounds so different than Burning Star. I mean, it's just full of just demonic riffs, and that's what I'm saying. I think that's why that album did give us our identity for the first time. I mean, Conquest, yeah. I mean, yeah, Angel of Death, I mean, God, Destroyer, that album's full of stuff that was way ahead of time.
Back then in 1986, yeah, a lot of people can't remember that far back anymore, but
I
it, it,
know.
it definitely was. I mean, the 80s was always evolving. Every couple of years, somebody picked up a new mantle and took it to another level, and everybody kind of went along with it, and it was constantly changing. I mean, and you guys just didn't go along with it because you took what was going on, added your own style to it, and then created something new out of it. So that's what I always loved about Hellstar is that you guys were always, I felt, a little ahead of the curve when the records came out. You guys were like on the edge of what was happening and you just added to it.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say there's a lot of bands that just were ahead of time. And and I think we were one of them because now uh I mean, even if you put out Burning Star or especially Remnants and Distant Thunder and all that, the new kids, the new generation of metal, they think that it's fresh. And you're like, sorry to tell you this, but little girl, you got to get off my bus. I'm old enough to be your grandpa. Yeah, but I love you. I know you do, but I'm not that kind of a pervert, all right? So you're beautiful and all. You got a beautiful accent, big blue eyes. You're somewhere in Eastern Europe and like they think that you're new. And you're like, God, I'm fucking old as shit. Smell me. I'm a vampire. I stink. Yeah. I smell like the earth. Yeah.
Well, at least your music does. And hey, James, we got to cut us off in a few minutes here on this Zoom because we got started a little late today and they only give you like 40 minutes. We're running out of time. But my
Yeah.
God, what a great job on the Devil's Masquerade. And when you put out that second Metal Wave record or another Hellstar record, we're going to do this again. Just don't make me wait 9 years because I don't know if I'm going to be around that long.
No. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to surprise a lot of people and we'll probably have a new record out within possibly 2 years or a year.
Well, I'm
Because
telling you,
we're on that train ride right now where we
yeah.
know where the chemistry really is. So all Larry has to do is lock himself in his room and just throw out 9 new songs musically, start sending them to me, take some of Alian's ideas for maybe a song or two, and then I start writing the lyrics and the vocals and melodies and the choruses, and me and Larry work together on that. And a lot of times he writes all the melodies and all the vocals and the lines and the words. Matter of fact, The Devil's Masquerade, that's Berrigan's baby. He wrote
Ah,
all that. So, and then we just kind of go over it before I come over, the ideas. So when I get to his house to record, we just start pushing record and we just go for it. So I don't think it's going to happen that way this time around.
well,
I
I'm
think that
glad.
yeah. I think we finally found that thing where we'll be like Iron Maiden, put out a record every 6 months, No, then it'll start sounding the same, Yeah, but yeah, no. Hey, 2 years is not bad.
Not at all. God willing, I should be here in 2 years. Or in your case, not
Yeah.
too willing, I should be here in 2 years. One of them will keep me around, hopefully, and I'll make it to
Oh,
that
you
next
will
record.
be because I bit you. You're not dying.
That's good. I got the Vampiro blood in me. I'm good to go.
Yeah, you're gonna live forever, dude.
That's
Yeah.
great. Anyway, well, James, listen, man, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always have a great time. And I wish we could have did it longer, but I'll catch you
Yeah, I
again
know.
soon.
Well, I will be in touch soon, and you know what? Take care. God bless you, my friend, and thank you for all the years of support. And I can't wait to see you again in person one day. Okay?
You got it, buddy. Have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye-bye.
Was it all a dream?
Brand new Helstar, The Haunting Mirror. I want to thank Rob, James, and Rock for being on tonight's show. I want to thank everybody for the last 17 years for listening. We've had over 3.25 million people listen to the show during that time frame, from Blog Talk Radio to Spreaker to here and all the other sites that we broadcast on. So thank you guys very much. And once again, I want to thank my crew in the chat room. Christian, Iman, and John for joining me every week. I do appreciate it, guys, very much. Let's wrap it up here tonight. I can squeeze in one more quickie. How about some Attacker with Slaves Blade? Take care, everybody. Have a great week. I'll see you guys next Sunday night. Adios.